to the Node.js team meeting looking at the next 10 years of Node.js. We'll follow the agenda that was tagged in the issue that was opened in the repo. That is issue number, let's just look here. That is issue number 15, if anybody wants to go take a look there. The main things that have been tagged for the issue is prioritizing technical values and the value directions for core. We'd started with the direction on the some of the technology and so forth that we needed to look at in terms of things like WASM, TypeScript, other things, HTTP, new versions of HTTP. But those we felt we needed to go back and first talk about some of the technical values and directions of the project, sort of the technical values, get those documented as sort of the basis for some of those discussions. So that's been, we worked on that the last couple of weeks. The issue where we've been capturing that is number 2. And in particular, there's a PR that came out of the last one, PR 11, which I'll share on the screen here, which has, what we've been talking about in terms of the values and the priority level. I think we could spend some time trying to expand into words what we believe, we should have in this doc for the high level things that we've described, which develop experience, stability, operational qualities, technology, and API currents. And there's also a comment that, we need to try and factor in the maintainer experience as well. So we have a few new people who weren't in the previous discussions. I don't know if there's, you have questions, want to, have comments on what's here before we get started in terms of the refining the value descriptions.
I have one question.
Go for it.
Sure.
Roy, you can go first.
Well, mine was not really a question. It's more, I would just say that maybe if you, Michael, want to recap the last couple of meetings. I've been to the first one in the summit, but I haven't been back ever since. So maybe just recap the last few meetings, what has been the activity.
Right. So that, basically we've been working on coming up with, well, actually here, there is, we look in here. We were starting, we were trying to look at the values. So the one thing we needed to do was, talk about the constituencies, like, so who are the different groups that we need to factor in to the values and what we do in the project. So we actually, worked on and came up with this list, which we've landed in terms of, we have our direct end users, we have people who operate applications, we have application developers, we have library package authors, and we have Node.js core maintainers. And those are the different constituencies that we believe we should keep in mind when we're thinking about the values, the technology directions, what we need to do to make us successful in the next 10 years. So that's one of the things that we did in the previous meetings. We then also worked on this value and prioritization, the values and prioritization. So we talked about, the technical values and, spent quite a bit of time going through these to say, what are the technical values? We did like a, one of those boards where everybody, puts in blindly what values they think are important, have been important to the project and to the success of the project. Everybody tagged them with like their top 3 or 4. We went through the whole process of, then filtering that down and combining them. And I think you can look at, if you went back and looked at the issues for those previous meetings. So if you went back and look at the closed issues, let's say, I'm just finding is this the last one? There should be a link here. I'm trying to think where we put the link to the Google Doc where we did a bunch of that.
Right. Yeah, no worries. Just this recap was
Yep.
already.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, you know, we
totally.
went through that. We got, you know, you can go back, you can watch the meeting. We did all that, and the net was the, you know, this PR, which is the okay. You know, we started out thinking it's going to be really hard to order them, but in the end, through the discussions, we actually came out with this ordering, which was like, you know, really we've prioritized developer experience over stability, over operational qualities, over technology and API currency.
Awesome.
And so, you know, I took the action out of that to say, okay, I'll write this up, which we did. And, you know, we need to fill out, you know, developer experience a little bit more what we mean by that. You know, we have some point notes, but I think we need to expand it out before we could put that into something that we would land into Node Core as like, here's our technical values and sort of how, when we're looking at a decision, you know, what are the priorities we need to factor in? Not that there aren't others, but these were like the top ones. And, you know, if we're having a hard time making the decision, it may help inform that decision, right?
Yeah. Cool.
The question that was posed here is like, maintainer experience has been discussed in some other meetings, not in this meeting. It was the web frameworks meeting. There's some discussion of this. And, you know, I think the point being made was if that the maintainer experience is too poor, we're not going to have people working in particular areas. So, you know, just to pick one, you know, at random, if I don't want to pick on anybody, but like, so, you know, say modules, say NAPI, say HTTP, if any one of those is really painful to maintain, we're not going to have maintainers. So it's important that we make sure that that maintainer experience is good as well. And I guess the question would be like, you know, from the people here, how do we think that fits into that list that we already have identified?
I don't think it fits into any of them. I think there was a suggestion of putting it under developer experience, but I don't think we can, because often the maintainer experience and developer experience can, if you lump them together, but they often contradict each other in some cases. Like, I guess a crude example would be, hey, for a developer, for a maintainer, it'd be really good if the feature I write zooms back to a previous release line as quick as possible. But that might actually impact developer experience in terms of migration or instability. So I think it needs to be its own, is it pro? But I don't know where it would fit in terms of numbers.
Any other people have thoughts?
Have you had the discussion on how this maintainer experience is different from just the regular developer experience?
I think the developer experience is the is the developers using Node, right? Like, it's not necessarily about develop. You know, it's a very
the maintainers
different
are also
thing.
using Node.
What was that?
Right. The maintainers are also using Node, right?
Right, but they are. I would say that they're different. If we go back to our constituencies,
right?
That, you know, they're acting in two of those, right? They're acting both in the maintainer constituency and the application developer one. And you can overlap, but that doesn't mean that they're the same thing. So I would almost like, I kind of agree it's a different thing. Like, it's about, you know, making it a priority to make sure the code that we have is maintainable, and that when you come to the project, you know, you technically you have a good experience.
Okay, so it's maintainers in the sense of Node.js collaborators.
Yeah, the collaborators, like basically the maintainers, sorry, Node.js maintainers.
Yeah, okay. I was
right?
thinking, yeah, because you mentioned the web framework group, I thought it was just package maintainers from the.
Yeah, no, sorry. Yeah, that's a good point. I'm almost wondering, thinking that like this would be my suggestion. People let me know. Node.js maintainer experience.
I was looking at around the 3 or 4 kind of ordering.
Let me see if I can actually figure out how to do a multi. Does that make sense to people? Like I can see that it is separate. And if I was to kind of like off the top of my head say where it fits, this is kind of where I see it fitting.
Sure.
Because I think it seems like and anybody speak up if you think otherwise. There's pretty much consensus that like the project, part of the success is that like we do work very hard to make the developer experience as good as we can. Followed by the things that you need to operate it, like keeping things stable, the LTS releases, diagnostics, then keeping up with current technology and APIs. And I think that fits in a reasonable spot. Beth, does that seem reasonable to you too?
Yeah, I was thinking around the 3 or 4 mark, just because I don't think ever should we compromise developer experience or stability for our own as maintainers experience. That's just my point of view. I think we should always put stability and developer experience first. Operational qualities, I think 3 and 4 are very close. But that, again, that's my opinion. So I think it's fine to leave them there.
Any concerns or objections, or should I make that update?
Such priority makes sense to me, so I totally agree. That would be a good addition.
Okay, I don't hear any no, so I'm going to commit that suggestion. Okay. So if if we're agreed, at least in this group, obviously we'll need more broader discussion from the Node collaborators, but if we're aligned with the people who are currently here, and this I think won't be too far out for anybody else who was involved in the previous discussions, we could move on to now like getting a better description of the developer experience of the different area. What do we mean by these different areas to make sure it's clear? So what do people think, factors into developer? What are the key things, that we should call out for developer experience?
I would particularly call out tooling.
Okay, so what kind of tooling?
Just in general, like all the tooling around working with Node and a Node.js project from the consumer point of view, right?
Right. So tooling, do you have just a concrete example of like a tool that you have in mind, or?
How
well,
about,
I mean,
sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, how about debuggers, profilers, etc., etc. So things that help to develop and maybe profile your application.
Those, I wonder if they fit under operational qualities. Maybe not.
Yeah,
No.
they intersect a bit.
They intersect with diagnostics a bit too. Yeah. Because those ones I'm wondering if would go under the operational qualities. Although I guess, yeah, they kind of could go either or both. Any other kinds of tools that you can think of?
I was thinking more about like userland kind of tools that is definitely like essential for the developer experience these days. Like, all kinds of tooling, like from old Yeoman or NPM to like Webpacks or Rollup. React, all the toolings that we have. Well, maybe not React in the context of Node.js, but you get my point. Like,
yeah, those I understand that point, but it's the project doesn't build any of those.
I know, but we should definitely have them in mind, right? I mean, I'm a participant of the tooling working group, so I'm definitely biased in here, right? But
right. So this is like, so yeah, I think now I get what you're saying, but it's kind of like good support for external tooling.
that's probably a better
Webpack,
description.
React.
Yeah, sure.
Just a really quick point of order. There's two
yeah.
people who need to be promoted.
Oh, thank you. Let me find participants. Sorry about that. So yeah, so I think that's a good one, like good support for external tooling, Webpack, React, etc. Good, and as it would be good to say good API support, or what's the, it's like, what is it that we need in Node that supports those?
It probably, yeah, it probably combines API and backwards compatibility and stability. So both of those.
But it might go even further, like in terms of also documentation and feedback, listening to feedback from these other communities, right?
Right, okay.
Might extrapolate just like technical APIs and etc.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like, okay, so, you know, let's see. So it almost sounds like what we should say, developer and includes both the experience of those using Node.js directly, as well as support for external tooling, Webpack, React, etc., as well as support, as well as I'm not, if anybody jump in with better words or whatever, but like, I'm kind of thinking it's like, you know, we basically say it's both, you know, the experience includes both the experience of those using Node.js directly, as well as ensuring external tooling has what it needs. External, and is it really packages? Because like, does that sound like what we're trying to cover?
I'm not sure Roy's initial intent, but my immediate thoughts on tooling is stuff that, you know, gets shipped with Node by default, like having the ability to spawn like a remote debugger or REPL, or I guess from the packages perspective, like we do ship a package manager by default, which is a tool. So I'm not sure if that's what we mean by tooling helps the developer experience, and we ship certain things to the community that improve that developer experience today, and we want to continue to do that. And or if it's just more of a listen to the community or continue.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's, you brought up some good points, like bundling things for, I'm not going to say convenience, but it's like to remove obstacles.
Yeah, to improve the developer experience, which I think if I scroll down in that doc, like you get close, you want to be careful not to like overlap with like technology and API currency, right? So the developer experience, you know, if we're saying that we improve that by the types of tooling that we ship, I guess that, you know, that also I think goes hand in hand with like the fact that the technology and the API surfaces we have are also improve the developer experience.
Right.
Right. Yeah. But definitely a separate point. Yeah.
Bundling APIs, components, which reduce. Like that's kind of a, does that capture what you were just saying, Darcy?
Let me read. So developers bundling API components, which reduce friction of using them. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Again, we're shipping tools that help improve the developer experience,
right?
Like development experience, and thus the developer experience of working with Node, right? So
yeah,
giving you and userland tools to create further tooling on top of, but also so that includes like some default package management capabilities, but also some default, you know, remote debugging capabilities or debugging capabilities that help you quickly, you know, play with Node. I think creates a good developer experience.
Right.
And those are all like tooling based. Yeah.
Right. So this one I was thinking more generically, like we come to that. Do we pull it into core? Do we not pull it into core? And, you know, I think based on some of our values, we pull things in that we believe reduces the friction of using them. So for example, you know, if it's something that requires a native module, that's actually a poor developer experience, or like a poor developer experience, because like when you actually have to work with that, you need to work with compilers and it's more work. And so that's one of the reasons
versus
we pull
a standard
things in.
lib. Is that kind of what you're thinking? Like it
well,
should be there by default, and there's
yeah,
some barrier
like
to entry because you have to know about that module then.
Well, not even knowing about it, but like it, you know, the same reason you could be say like, hey, we bundle NPM as a package manager because, you know, having it there already improves the developer experience.
Right.
And you can argue, you know, for different things, you can argue why it improves the developer experience or not. Like, for example, you know, bundling in the debugger, well, maybe like, you know, not having it bundled, maybe that's just impossible, right? Like that one, that kind of tooling, I think might come under the operational kind of qualities, but you know, the things like the RimRaf or whatever, right? You could, and it was an external module for a long time, or the same thing with the context local storage API. But like we start to bring things in when we think it significantly improves the developer experience to have it as part of core versus outside. So I think that because it's kind of,
so it's kind of interesting because like technology and API currency to me, because we keep almost like touching on that, right? But that's to me not necessarily really a value, whereas like improved developer experience would be a really outright value. Like that's something that we're valuing going forward. And as a artifact of work to improve developer experience, we get better tooling, better APIs. We start to bring back into our standard lib user land type ideas and concepts that like improve that, right?
Right. Okay.
So, you know what I mean? Like, so because we're going to constantly come back to our API surface and technology that we're shipping if we're talking about developer experience, right? You want low friction APIs, you want, you know, things that are fast, speed, you know, like.
Let's say, for example, something like HTTP2. Does that, I think that's the kind of thing where it's like, would that be part of developer experience? Or, you know, in this case, it would have been like, from previous discussions, we would have put that under technology and API currency. It doesn't necessarily improve the developer experience, but it's still relevant in that, you know, you need to cover the new technologies, add new surface area to stay up to date and be current.
Yeah, I feel like developer experience could swallow the world like this.
That's where, yeah, that's why we want to be, we don't want it to swallow the world, right? Like it's meant to be the, like, not include, like you could say stability. Well, okay, but it's developer experience. It's like, it's meant to be more narrow and so that we actually can have a prioritization, right?
Yeah, I think also the other thing we're missing here, like maybe two steps back, it's we're just defining the values, right? So it should be just like the guiding value. Like we don't need, I feel like now we're digging too much into technical details. Like
I guess it's, yeah, we just need enough here so that people, when it's like, okay, what are their values, so that we understand what they mean.
Yeah, when making decisions, I imagine that's gonna be the most valuable, right? To have this document, like, yeah.
Yeah, and it's to like have a little bit of like, what do we mean by developer experience? So like, I think we can agree, great documentation, right?
Yeah,
like,
sure.
And, you know, approachability, like that seems, you know, this one, I don't know, what do people think?
No, yeah, I still have my stand my previous point, but it would be like a more generic, vague, such as enabling user land tooling, right, as a value that we should keep in mind for in order to provide a better developer experience.
Right. So yeah, so that might be, so it's like enabling
third party, or I don't know, yeah, user land. I know user land is very used as a term by the collaborators. But yeah, maybe it's external package, yeah.
To ensure a great, a good, a wider.
Or maybe just enable external package. I think is already good enough as a value to have there to guide future decisions.
Right, supporting. What's that?
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, yeah, no, that's any other things that stand out as a, like, and how do we think we should best, like, should we try and put this into words, or, you know, I mean, do we really need to explain this? Develop efficiently.
I don't know. I feel like it's a it's a little bit repetitive there.
Yeah, we value
Yeah.
exactly. That's what I'm trying to. We value our productive, and enjoy developing with.
Great.
That
I like
sound
it.
good?
Yep.
Any other comments? Like, I think that's probably enough, like enough for that. Like if that's, you know, we value productive and enjoy, because I think that's things I hear people call out about Node a lot. And then we've got a few of the key elements which we can add. So I think that sounds good to me. What do people think?
Sounds good.
Okay, now where did this, why do I have, what's all, did I, okay, right, so I'm gonna get rid of this stuff. And I'll commit that. Okay, so stability. So let's do the same thing there. This one may be easier. So we value ensuring that what's a good word? We value
consistency maybe also might be.
does that sound anything else that fits into that, you know, backwards compatibility, predictable and stable releases, a strong safety net?
Looks good.
Okay. Okay, operational. So we value to monitor no, so we value weight um, okay. Does that sound? Maybe I think we should say maybe just pull this out.
So when we say performance, we mean speed.
Versus
Just because I don't see that word anywhere. Like performance could be stability, I guess.
yeah, I was thinking throughput. Is that it's like putting speed?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay. Dumps, core dumps. Any other things come to mind? Like we were talking about tooling before. Is there any other specific kind of tooling that fits into this area?
Probably we should mention profiler here because
Right.
it's good to
That's
have
like
it
this.
in the core.
Right. CPU, memory, profilers, maybe.
in terms of size and like size and speed, sometimes those things are like competing priorities, right? Like
Right,
you might have
yeah.
to write you might have to write a lot of code to get something more performant or like more fast, right? So I'm just wondering if that having those competing priorities under the same thing like doesn't really necessarily help us delineate what we prioritize, right? Like,
no, but I think we can only like 5, I think, is already as many as I think we'd want to call out at the highest level.
I'm just wondering, like, are we gonna like stack rank these then? Like, is it gonna like would speed trump size? Like,
I don't think we have
throughput
consensus
trump
on what
size?
that would mean. Like, I wouldn't say, yeah, just size always trumps speed or vice versa. And I guess all this is never like always anyway, but I think it would be, yeah, like I'm not sure that we would be able to say, like in this case, I think we're saying, you know, developer experience should trump size. So if we were to say, well, I can make it really, really small, but it decreases developer experience.
Right, you wouldn't do that.
We'd
right?
say, no, we're not
Yeah.
going to do that, right? Same with like, yeah, I can make it really, really small, but it's not going to be stable. No, we won't do that either, right? If you say I'm going to make it much smaller, but the performance is a bit worse, you might. If it was like, we're making it much smaller, but you're killing performance, we'd say, no, we won't do that because that's one of the other things that's valued under the operational qualities. But you might make a trade-off from like some size, some throughput for some size or vice versa.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay. Any other things to kind of call out here, like that in terms of these operational qualities that we think are like, you know, I know size, small size, fast speed startup, you know, making sure we have diagnostic tooling. Those are all key things that, you know, certainly the small size and startup has been, you know, part of the success in the beginning. The diagnostic tooling, we've had a fairly heavy focus on in terms of like saying we need to improve and build that out to continue to be successful. Are there any other things like that in that category that are worth mentioning? If not, maybe I will add that because we have 8 minutes left, which we may just get to the last one. Okay, so technology and API currency. So we value providing and I think anybody got some better words for that? Like that's
Like up to date. Yeah, I don't know. Modern. You could say modern APIs. You could say, yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess like standard as well. Like we want to continue to
right.
Right.
maintain standard APIs with
Right.
our browser counterparts type thing. So
Yeah, so let's That sound good?
Yep.
Because yeah, if we're going to add in something new, our first goal would be to like, let's, reuse something that's already out there.
I don't know if it has to be web standards. I know
Okay.
particularly with like, yeah, like the tooling work that we've done, we've looked at like just the landscape, like the Unix landscape. Like, do we want to map, standardize some of the methods or utilities that we provide? Like,
yeah. Okay, no, that's better to be general like that. So let's see if we say some key elements of this include. Should we put web API compatibility in there?
I think so.
Any other things like that specifically to call out? It's kind of like, is it experimenting and exposing? Like, does the project value bringing in things earlier rather than later?
Like innovation, you want to like try to make a line for like
yeah, like is there
how
anything
we do experimental flagging and yeah, try to push, yeah.
It's more like I'm just thinking like, would we typically say, let's be a laggard, wait till something, settles and, it's well adopted and then we'll bring it in? Or, does the project look to be a leader and, more of a early adopter and exposing new technologies like early in their cycle versus late in the cycle?
Right.
I'm just not sure 100% in my mind what I've seen the project sort of reflect on that front, and also what we think is important going forward, right? Like you could take the tact of, hey, we just wait, but I don't think, to be honest, I don't think that's kind of the approach the Node project takes. It's more like, let's bring new things in earlier than later, right? What do people think on that?
Well, it's just interesting because I've seen it probably both ways.
Right. Okay.
So
what
like,
are some of the examples?
Well, the tool, like in tooling specifically, like where we're just coming around to adding some, I guess, like nice to have file system operations like that, like rimwrap, like you noted, like
right,
or recursive, like chmod or like any kind of like things like that, where it's like, oh well, this stuff lives in like Unix POSIX, and it's like, oh, we should have these methods and this capability by default. It's been pretty standard, like these things. There's other libraries out there that have been fully adopted in user land. We're finally gonna offer these like by default in our standard lib or in a utility now. So that's one where I think that we are a bit of a laggard in that example, and examples like that where we take a long time to adopt those. Whereas, I think we're probably more aggressive on things that like I think even ESM, like there's not a lot of like web browsers where people are shipping like a lot of modules like today, right? Like,
Right.
So we're actually, I would say we're keeping up with like the standards, and we're keeping up with like the discussion there, and helping to ship tooling and helping to ship capabilities that are going to help with the adoption of
Right, but just my thoughts on those two examples is like, the first example, I don't know that it's like, hey, there was this new trend of people saying, let's do recursive make dir and all that, and we were waiting on something. I think it was more that, you know, the case has been made recently that helps developer experience, and that's why it's starting to come in. Sure. And, you know, maybe before it was like we valued small core versus developer experience. And that's, you know, so it wasn't necessarily that it was a, hey, here's a new technology like WASM or like ES6 modules, and we said, no, let's wait to see how that stabilizes, right? It was kind of a different thing in that case, where it wasn't about adopting a new technology. It was just about whether it should be in or out of core kind of thing. So I guess I'm just saying, I'm not sure that we were a laggard in that area, but whether that means our approach to new technologies is being a laggard or not. Versus the other one you mentioned, like ES6, we seem to be more leading, right?
Yeah, it depends on like maybe then the context there, which is like when it comes to standards, let's say like ES standards, then like we are aggressive and want to prioritize that work and being a part of that conversation early and often.
Is that fair, do you think?
Yeah, I think that's accurate too.
Okay. Okay, well, I think we're 2 minutes over, so I'll add that in. Oops. So I think that's actually not a bad description of each of these, except we forgot the maintainer experience. So I think we're out of time, unfortunately, but we can come back to, I'll try and write up something as a maintainer experience if everybody can take a look and review. But I think this is looking pretty good with the work we did today. And, you know, maybe we you know, get a little bit more feedback through GitHub, and it might be ready to PR this into Node Core if people agree.
Awesome.
And we'll certainly get a lot more conversation discussion going there, but we can go from there.
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, well, thanks for everybody's time, and we will see you in GitHub and hopefully in the next meeting in a couple times. Talk to everybody later. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.